What is up, everybody? Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Sunday Open with Nick4aTick. I'm Nick. How is everybody doing? I know we can address the immediate elephant in the room. This is a little different setup. You are witnessing Nick being under construction, I guess is the way we can kind of describe this for the time being. I am also adjusting to my own little new layout of monitors and things have moved around. So I'm still getting used to this too. I have not traded from this new setup yet. And I'm going to, we're all going to go through this growing pains with me tonight as I figure out the best way to fix this going forward. But it's going to be a work in progress. As you can see from behind me, the Streamer Boy headquarters is currently, I think I need some caution tape, a construction hat. I've done a lot of work to my office this past week. And that's going to continue for the next few days at the very least. I'm trying to get through this week's shows before I just continue to kind of hammer home. I basically left the stream Wednesday. We started taking apart the desk, moving the monitors, moving all the wires. And I realized, oh yeah, I do have a show on Sunday and I need to make sure audio, visual, everything charts is functioning correctly. So that's where we're at. So you'll get to witness this evolving Streamer Boy setup with me over the next week or so until it is complete. But yeah, we're doing things a little different. So bear with me tonight as I probably fumble through my charts a little bit and get comfortable with this new layout, this new setup. There's plenty of monitors on my desk. There's plenty of lights. So hopefully this is all going to work out. But how was everyone's weekend? And let's get to the charts, shall we? Talk about this past week. I just realized where the YouTube chat is and I need to move it because I can't actually see it in my current view of things. So we're going to move that over. Yeah, Fatfish, I do need help. This has been, I mean, I'm sure one of the boys is going to make a joke about this week, but there's no entrance to this little L desk in my office. I am walled in to this little cave of mine that I have built. So I do, in fact, need to go under the desk. So I'm just going to be the first person to tell you guys that because I know Leo's going to be waiting for the opportunity to throw that at me this week during Trade the Close. So I'm just going to be the first person to admit it. Yes, I have to gargoyle myself above or below this desk to get into it. So that's fun. It makes you feel like a kid again. Like I built a little fort as I'm having to maneuver under a very large desk with a bunch of lights, wires, and monitors to actively do the show for you guys. But as I said, the show set is going to evolve as I continue to kind of adjust it and tweak things and see how everything kind of transpires over this trading week, which looking at the charts, looking at the previous week, and even thinking about last Sunday where we were kind of opening below 6,300s. What did we do? Well, we kind of just went back up and basically settled into the center of balance where we've kind of been for the last 3 weeks, where a majority of the volume has now taken place, basically between the 63.40s and as high as the 64.20s. And that kind of brings us right back to a place that I didn't think we were going to return to as quickly as we have. And that is my magic blue box from 3 weeks ago almost now. But back up here towards kind of the 64.40s down to the 62, let's call it the high 20s, the 28s, 29s in the early part of this week. So I can't say I predicted this. I thought, given the violence of the previous Thursday and Friday, and even that kind of, we came up to this exact spot, this little magic blue box that I drew on Thursday in the overnight and immediately sold off from it. So I don't know. I didn't really trade much on Friday after this, and I caught a good chunk of this flush on Thursday. But for the most part, this week just kind of looked like we were back to our regularly scheduled programming of continuing to march higher and make a run at another all-time high, which if you look at NQ, we are just a chef's kiss away of a blow off top to make it to 24,000. And we'll talk about that shortly. But for the most part, it seems like we had absolutely no interest in kind of retesting the previous week's low last week, going back to that violence of Thursday and Friday. We never even made a little bit of an attempt to go down and kind of even look at potentially breaking that level and losing this little couple month long balance. And I just lost my cursor. There we go. This little month plus long balance going back to the early parts of July. For the most part, what did we do last week? We basically just retraced all of Thursday and Friday from the previous week. So it's now sitting basically, just under the all-time high. As I said, just a little kiss away from it. I would be shocked if we didn't take it out at some point this week. There's not a ton of things going on. We have a lot of Fed speakers this week. There's CPI, but for the most part, it kind of just feels like, maybe there's another run in this. Maybe the market's going to make that next move higher, go make another all-time high. And I am here to say I'm kind of over it, I guess. I kind of wanted to see this little, I guess if you're a believer in seasonality and the August volatility into September, this is not that week that you kind of wanted to see after those two violent days that we saw the previous week. Now we're just kind of back into the center of balance. And to be honest, I don't have a great edge outside of continuing to look for any sort of real strength kind of above this 64,000 even spot on the old SPOOs. And if we can start to get a decent volume build, honestly, just right above last week's high anywhere, like if we find buyers continuing to step in here, it's probably off for the races and we're going to make another all-time high. But I'm cautious just based on where we're probably going to open, which is going to be around this spot likely. And I mean, even if we do find sellers potentially offering up here in the early parts of this week, I'm not really convinced on any meaningful downside until we really do break below this kind of 6240s. It could be a new ceiling, which basically was kind of the, or let me go look. Well, no, I guess that old all-time high was further down, but it just seems to be acting as a bit of a floor for the time being. And I'm not ready to say this never-ending march and exhaustive moves that we keep getting to the upside. And I say exhaustive, not in the way of thinking that buyers are in fact exhausted with continuing to buy the all-time high and sell it higher, but the fact that trading this all summer has been a bit exhausting. And, when you get a couple days worth of some decent two-way tape and some downside volatility, it's kind of fun. You get excited. It's not necessarily easy to trade. It's a widen your stop, size down type of tape at times. But for the most part, I mean, it's an easy way to capture a good amount of your day very quickly and be able to kind of walk away from the desk. When we get into these like slow, choppy, keep moving back up, grinding higher type all-time highs that we've been in since post-Liberation Day, it's just, I'm exhausted. I'm ready for the summer to be over. I'm ready for some volatility to potentially return, some volume to get back into this tape, and maybe us finding a new home that's not just a very tight, small balance area that we are currently in. So looking at this, I mean, I'm probably playing this as a bit of a box. I'm looking for sellers to kind of offer in the 6440s to 6430s. And I'm probably buying down here towards the 6300s. Like any bid that kind of steps in this general area, I'm probably buying it unless we are just, back to that knife catching type of mode that we saw in the previous couple of weeks. How has everyone been handling this? It's been a lot of fun to trade in the afternoon. As I've always talked about when we do trade the close, is power hour has never been my favorite time of the day to trade. It's never been the best tape for me. I think we get stuck in ranges that are very miserable at times to sit through. But how did everyone do last week? I guess is the big question that I can ask everybody. I had a very good Monday because I caught maybe it wasn't Monday, whatever day it was. Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday where we had that nice break to the downside, offering like on NQ is like 23,000, like 250s. I think the reoffer came in. Like I caught a great trade there. I had another, I think a decent one on Thursday. I didn't really trade Friday because I had decided to take apart my desk on Thursday night. So it was kind of just, I took one trade, and I didn't capture a whole lot of points, but just kind of was in and out just to feel something, just to feel alive on my Friday, I guess. But for the most part, I'm not finding a ton that's been interesting enough for me to like sit at the desk all day. I think there's been moments throughout this summer, some great days here and there, but for the most part, it's been a very much kind of get your points and get out and not waste your entire type of day tape. And I'm thankful that I've been able to do that. But man, this has kind of been a grind. So that's how I'm looking at this. We do have an auto plotted balance range, kind of higher than even what I'm looking at, with kind of putting the top edge of it up here at the 6450s as well. So that's provided by the Order Flow Labs tools that basically is auto plotting some of this MGI for me, but is creating this balance range kind of, I guess, yeah, a little wider than I was even looking at it. But for the most part, we could even probably look at like the 6350s, 6360s, kind of the month open for August, potentially as a bit of a spot to potentially interact with too. Like, are we starting to see these little value areas that are starting to stack up there, potentially going to act as a new floor if we come down here and retest? I'd be kind of cautious with shorting in the hole there. It probably would be like covering and looking to kind of just wait and see. Are we going to break this and potentially rotate all the way down towards the 6310s, if not a little lower? But I don't know. This has been a tough tape. Last week was very challenging at times. I feel like, especially, I mean, I don't know whoever tries to short in the overnight, but every day last week, it felt like Asia and London had just marched just higher, like, and just never ending buying on a thin tape. And then somebody came in the morning every time and kind of sold into some of that strength. And some of those days continued to us kind of meander to the downside. And then the following overnight session, we just moved back up. And then another day we came down. And then all night on Friday morning, we grind up and then have a nice little trend day to the upside, with a lot of consolidation and then a final little gut punch to anybody trying to sell the 720s and NQ towards the end of the day. So, like I said, not necessarily the most fun tape to trade in parts of last week, but it's just been hard to get, I guess, anything outside of a single day mindset, like a single session mindset, excuse me. Like if you had anything more than that in terms of a bias with some of these like violent day up, violent day down, up, down, up, down, that's kind of how the previous week seemed. So, and the overnight, I think was contributing a lot to some of those moves higher. Like if you guys remember Monday morning when we gapped down and then just marched all the way up, came into the pre-market with Leo and I on Monday. I was talking about my worst case scenario for the session would just be absolutely like off to the races, never look back, don't retrace any of the overnight volume. And that's exactly what we got. And that's like the worst possible tape for me to come into to start the week, expecting any sort of like mean reversion or retracement or cleaning up of the overnight profile. No, just up and away and never look back. So we'll see how we open here. Oh, we're about to open. I lost track of time because my setup looks different. We're going to open in 40 seconds. So let me know your thoughts on how we are going to open for ES or NQ for the indices. Are you guys thinking gap up, gap down, settlement? We're going to look at this on my execution chart, but for the most part, I have absolutely no edge. If I was a betting man, like if you really had to give you guys a thought, I'd say very small gap down, and we're probably going to fill that very quickly and just continue to kind of probably find some aspect of a settlement around here of basically Friday's point of control of 64.15s. I would imagine that's something of what we get. Oh, look, a small gap down. At least on ES. NQ looks like it didn't. So there you go. Quiet open, spread on NQ, about 2.5 points. Good luck to anybody coming in here hot and trading this. But I'm hopeful that this is going to be a fun week. It's kind of that last week before, not necessarily summer is over, but kids I think are slowly, at least in Texas, heading back to schools. Hopefully that means the The Hamptons crowd is going to be returning to the desk shortly. Volume may return to this market in the coming weeks and possibly give us something decent to trade. But so far, very quiet open. NQ actually marching a bit higher. I don't have an echo in my ear. Oh, it's because I didn't mute the YouTube chat. So I can actually see the video and hear it in my ears for a hot second there. Week open on NQ. I know I always like to give you guys these 765s on ES, going to be right around that 64, let's call it 22s and change, because I can't exactly see that perfectly. So quiet open so far. That's an interesting spot for the week open to be kind of right at that, the base of my magic blue box. And that would be, unfortunately, the big round number that is going to be the 6,400 on the SPOOs. So shocker. This would be a week where the week open definitely could be acting as a bit of a pivot, or a place that we definitely could find a lot of support, or a lot of sellers stepping in to kind of reoffer up there. So it'll be interesting to see where we are trading tomorrow morning when I get to the desk. But we opened right around that big round number and option strike for this week. So Kane's already buying the dip. Good luck to you, sir. Kane's one of the hardest working men in trading. I've got to say that. He just seems to be everywhere. And I know it's late for him across the pond. Or Kane, are you still stateside? Or did you go home? So Kane's home. All right. So yeah, it's definitely late for him then. But I appreciate you hanging out, buddy. All right. So on NQ, like I said, very similar profile to ES. We had that gap down to start last Sunday on the show, and it was immediately bought, and like a freight train off the open, just continued to march higher and start to build volume above the August open of 23,300. And we kind of had a very similar profile, very similar week to what we saw on ES. But NQ, I said this, just an absolute like chef's kiss away from making another new all-time high, which is going to be sitting right here around the 23,850s. What is the exact number? I should actually probably know that off the top of my head. 47 and change. So yeah, 850s will push us up to a new all-time high and probably give us a date with the big round number above us, which is 24,000 evens. And then we can make our never-ending march of trading between kind of 420 levels to 420 levels, which the market seems to like to do for some reason. So an area I'm watching is going to be right up here around the 23,800 evens. We saw this is basically where the rally went to die. I can't remember. This was after Microsoft and Meta reported that Wednesday. We had that big blast off post FOMC, came up here, and then kind of just melted from there on Thursday and Friday. So that would be your first area to be watching to the upside for sellers to continue to kind of be sitting on the offer if they do exist. If not, only 50 points higher, we will be running into that new all-time high, another all-time high. I actually would be curious if anyone knows how many all-time highs have we hit this summer. I think we broke last summer's record. I would imagine we did. So yeah, I'm watching up there to see if there is anybody coming in and actually trying to sell this thing down, but possibly take some profit. We'll see. Like I said, also at the very tippy top of this auto plotted balance range here. But looking at this, seeing how NQ's been building, I'm really watching down here towards the 23,300s. As I was saying, that is the August open, and kind of is where that bleeding stopped on Thursday. In the kind of early parts of that session before we just continued to make that move and march higher. As I said, going back even the next few weeks, if we do get any sort of meaningful downside, you have to get through the big, massive wall that is 22,800s. And until we break below this, month and a half long balance and move higher, we retraced a month of volume in 2 sessions, and then the following week retraced that entire move, just like we did on ES. So you see how fast we can kind of do it. And I think we're all accustomed to, if you were trading in March and April, kind of post Valentine's Day massacre, I mean, it's not going to take a tremendous amount of sessions for us to make a violent move to the downside if there is some sort of catalyst that actually gives us the fuel to want to move to the downside. And trust me, I would love to step my foot on the red button and short this thing with Kane all the way to zero, but it just doesn't work that way, it seems. Every meaningful dip has been bought, and that's the same motion we've been in for almost 3 months now, it feels like. So until that's proved wrong, until we kind of break this to the downside, I'm, looking for shorts intraday. But for the most part, if I can find that larger dip in the week that I'm able to buy, I'm happily stepping in with both hands, unless something is really actually driving us lower. It's hard to fight this tape. We've been talking about it for weeks on this show. When you get this type of price action, breaks of balance, things like that, you don't necessarily want to fade them. And every break of balance has been to the north side. So here we go again. These last 3 weeks, basically trading between that 23,000 to basically 22,800s to this 23,800s. Let's just call it that. So that 1,000 points of range. And realistically, in the last 3 weeks, basically trading all the volume between the 700s and let's call it the 200s for just good measurement here. So that roughly 500 point range, when that 500 point range basically will break, I probably want to be on the right side of that move. If it were to break meaningfully to the downside, I would imagine this 800 little spot here might be toast, and maybe we perhaps come down towards the 22,300s, which would be a lot of fun to trade if we actually got some of that sort of downside. But for the most part, as I said, I'm watching for a dip somewhere in this kind of 200s to 400s, 200 to 300s spot that I can potentially step in and get along the train to perhaps come make a new all-time high. So yeah, it's just, this kind of broke my heart that we didn't get another attempt at 800s in the previous week, and we just left it last Sunday and never looked back. Makes me a little sad. Cooper, you feel like RTY is going to hit an all-time high before we get a major pullback in ES? Last time I looked at RTY on like a longer time frame, like a daily, it feels like it's been in a never-ending range for like 2 years. Like a decent, kind of wide range, but for the most part, it really feels like it hasn't done anything. So if old Rusty makes a new all-time high before a pullback, God help us, man, with some of the companies that are in that bucket at times. I feel like every good company ends up moving into the S&P, moving into something else, and Rusty is just left holding the bag, which is probably why it doesn't ever leave that type of range that it's kind of been in forever. I don't know. Somebody probably smarter than me can probably explain if that's actually the reason, but that's at least what helps me sleep at night, is thinking the reason the Rusty doesn't move very far is because the good companies leave, and so it's forever range bound. So far, to start tonight off, I mean, week open up there at the, I guess broke above even Friday's high in the after hours, and reoffered at 60/40s and is about 50 points down, currently tagging the previous day high on NQ. So nothing meaningful to the downside off the open just yet, but for the most part, finding some sellers, at least initially coming into the market, exactly where you'd expect them, at least on ES for the most part. NQ, like I said, that 23,800 spot is going to be something I'm going to watch. And I like that the week open's kind of sitting there, potentially giving us maybe some trades off of it this week. So we'll move on to crude oil, who absolutely broke my heart last Sunday when we talked about this exact scenario, where we were sitting at the very top of balance when we were coming into the show. We were talking about this kind of 67 even spot being the top of the balance range, and you'd really want to see us finding buyers and potentially breaking out above it, possibly to go up here towards kind of the 68s to 68.50 little LVN from that previous week when we were coming in and starting the show. But the other side of that scenario was if we found sellers, the path of least resistance was to go traverse to the bottom of the balance range, which was going to be, I think it expanded a little bit now if we were to bring in the rest of the volume down here. But all it did was went back to that old blow off top that we had up towards like 78s, 80s, whatever it was, during the little conflict in the Middle East that we were having. Not Middle East, now I'm totally blanking, but geopolitical stuff. And basically we reoffered violently from there, came down here towards 63s. And that was kind of the floor for the time being. Well, last week we went and retested that almost exact wick, going back to that violent week that we had the last week of June. And now we may be continuing to just meander right back into the center of this range. There was one trade that I think it was coming into the pre-market that we had talked about, which was basically kind of around the 65 evens, was taking the stab long, just knowing that you had kind of July's value area low sitting there, and it just looking at the structure from the previous weeks, it just made sense to at least take a stab. You got a decent move off that, but then somebody came in with a hammer and just smacked us all the way for the rest of the week just to retrace the entire rest of this balance range. So what does that tell me? Well, there's a lot of price stability in crude currently, and that price stability is basically keeping us meandered in the 67s to let's call it 64 range, because I don't quite want to catch the knife down here at 63s in case we do get a violent low and, break inside 60s. But for the most part, I'm still comfortable. Like, I guess you can call me an oil bull at all times, 24/7. I'm happily looking to find ways that I can buy and be long crude oil for some reason. It's the opposite of indices, which, like I've said before, I never need a reason for me to short ES or NQ. If it makes sense, if it's on the tape, I'm happily jumping along in a stupid trade to the short side. For some reason, I cannot hit the red button on crude oil. There's just something in my DNA that doesn't let me do it. So looking at where we opened, currently trading around 63, 64s. And that is basically aligning with last week's value area low. And the bulk of a lot of this, the bottom edge of this balance range volume that's been sitting there. So you continue to find buyers kind of pushing us into the 63.80s. I might happily take a decent stab long there, at least for a return up here towards kind of the 65 evens, that spot we were talking about last Sunday as well. So there may be a decent trade here. I'm as somebody who's like a perma bull in crude oil, always looking for a long. If there's an opportunity to kind of buy it at the bottom edge of the range, I mean, I may actually take a stab at that, but we'll see. This is, like I said, a lot of price stability. And I know coming out of last week, when we kind of peaked, or 2 weeks ago, when we peaked up here to the mid 70s and we came back and stalled right at that, the top edge of that 67s, I was really thinking, okay, there's your retest. And maybe this is when crude's going to break out a little higher again and come up here towards like the 72s, the bottom edge, or this little low volume node that was sitting here kind of between the 71.50s and 72. I thought that was going to be the trade this week once we broke out above 67s, and it never came. The sellers were on the tape. So let's hope the buyers want to defend this area down here in the 64s and actually make potentially this value traverse or this balance area back up here towards the 67s. Like I said, something in my DNA does not let me ever want to short crude, even though for some reason, because crude can go negative, I just think I can just never find a reason to want to short it, I guess. So I say this, I know I talk about crude and GC every week, but I don't actually trade them ever. I may dabble. I'm going to watch this tonight. There's a chance I may throw on some MCL and see what happens this week. See if I can build into something down here. But yeah, definitely looks like it could be setting up. I also could be fading a good 6-7 trading day trend here. I need XY to come in here. Maybe he'll join me one of these Sundays and he can draw some proprietary lines on this chart to tell me if I'm fading this trend. But no, I'm looking along the bottom edge of balance. we'll see if it actually evolves. I kind of want to see, like I said, where we are trading in the early parts of tomorrow's session, but I kind of like this. We retested the bottom edge of that low from June, found some buyers, and kind of settled back into the value area from the previous week. So constructive. I'm not saying that's going to be the low. Sometimes I like to see us like violently take this out and then come back in before I'm ready to get long. So cautiously going to be watching this. Let's see kind of what happens here. If we get above, like I said, into the 64s, gives me a little more confidence, but I'm still kind of holding my breath a little bit if, for that next little spot up here, up at like the 64.30s to the 64.40s. Yeah, I agree. It could very much come up to this value, like the bottom edge of this, or even the point of control at 64 and kind of reject and then make that excess low maybe that I'm looking for. So that's why I'm saying like I'm going to be actually watching Crude a little bit this in the early part of tonight's session and into tomorrow, just to see if a trade potentially presents itself, at least on a longer time frame than me scalping a few points in the session. Let's see if there's maybe a trade for the week of a value traverse to the upside. That's kind of what I'm seeing if I can try to eyeball, and that's why I'm saying like maybe throw on the micros and see if I can build into something. But yeah, violently us breaking below this low is very possible if we find some sellers just right around the value area low from last week. So we'll see. What's funny? I've never traded RBOB, and the only energy product I've traded is Crude. I have screwed around in the sim with natural gas before, and that was enough for me. I don't think I'd ever trade it, but RBOB would be interesting too. I've never actually stared too diligently at one of those charts before. So, but I'm always interested in random products that we don't always talk about, trade, and if someone could show me a setup, or if I would have really watched some of the products day in and day out, I probably would trade more. I really needed to like build a screener of things, but this is the problem. Like I don't follow, trade, watch energy metals enough like intraday for me to probably even have a good amount of insight into what to put into a screener to alert me to things when they're happening. But like anything else, I base a lot of my trading on volume profile, delta, and a few other things. So God knows I could throw on MGI, a volume profile, and probably be able to take a trade and hopefully have some success. But I don't know. We'll see. Fatfish has 2 monitors now. Feels like this just got serious. I see your 2 monitors, and I raise you 3 for me to, do this show, and then a second computer with another monitor as well. So it's too many. As I was doing this new setup and me realizing I have to climb under my desk to get into this setup, it might be too much. I may need to figure something out in the long term, but for the time being, it works. Got my screens, I got my charts. Everyone's happy. So let's talk a little bit about gold. What a violent week to the upside in this precious metal. If you weren't paying attention, I guess it was Thursday into Friday, you had the Swiss tariff news on gold, and I still don't fully understand it. And I don't think the White House even fully understood it when they released the statement. But yeah, this is kind of what caused this chaotic, crazy 60-point move to the upside that we then retraced, and settled back inside the value area from the previous week. But all it tells me is now not only is there uncertainty in a lot of the world and what's going on with rate cuts and inflation and geopolitical things, but now we have to worry about uncertainty in the gold market even further, with possibly tariffs on foreign gold. I don't know. Sometimes guys, I just scratch my head at some of these things, I guess. But all it did was just make gold go absolutely haywire to the upside. So, but since we settled back into this range and are just barely above kind of the tippy top of the old balance range, or not even old balance range, or the balance range that still is, in my opinion, in effect, just because the reason we kind of violently left it was because of that news. So I'd be watching week open, basically sitting at that top, kind of somewhere between this 3440s spot was kind of the old top that I was kind of calling for this range. And yeah, it's let's see if it acts as support, I guess, is, maybe we're finally going to break out of this 100-point range that gold has been in for months. I don't care if it's to the upside, just let's finally leave the range. So at the end of Friday, we basically bounced off that level, and the week open is sitting a little bit higher. And that basically is putting us what is that? The value area high from the previous week. So if we continue to see, sorry, gosh, my brain is, I'm getting used to this setup. It's different. I'm still kind of like looking in the wrong spot of where I'm expecting things to be off the corner of my eye. And that keeps throwing me off a little bit. So this is going to take a little getting used to. Thank you guys for bearing with me here tonight. If we find some buyers continuing to step up here in the 3460s, then yeah, let's go make a march and go make a new all-time high in gold. If not, if we find sellers here, the logical place for us to return is potentially traversing all the way back down here, at the very least towards 3,400 evens. And if not, we go back to our lovely home that is 3440s, which would basically be the August open. And that would basically equate to us retracing all of last week's volume, pretty much. So for the time being, I'm cautiously optimistic that we are going to leave this range finally, but also could be true when we get more clarification on whatever the heck this is actually going to mean. Maybe we get some support stepping in here at the 3440s and we just make that march up to the 3550s and go make a new all-time high. 3540s, whatever it is. I think it's higher. 3540s, I guess, would be a new all-time high. So we'll see how that evolves. For the most part, guys, I'm staying away. When things get like this, when we're going to talk about tariffs on gold and things, like, I'm probably staying away. But yeah, I'm curious to see, do buyers continue to step in and defend the top of that old range at 3440s? If not, short this thing down. Do the same exact play we were talking about in crude. So you take that exact balance range rotation to the other side if we were to lose that. So yeah, pause there for a second and grab some water. Look at the chat. I prefer one ultra wide, nice monitor, management with hotkeys. I will see your one ultra wide monitor and raise you two, and then one that's vertical, because I'm a crazy person, I guess. I upgraded this setup when I was doing this, so I have another ultra wide monitor now. Because why not? When you're doing the stream and things, and I have like something else I have to kind of see and manage in the corner of my eye. But yeah, the more monitors you have equates to a bigger P&L days is one thing. I do all of this just to still lose money every day. So all of these monitors still to lose some days. Okay. Where was I? Let's see YM. YM doing anything? Nope. YM is just not having as much fun as ES and NQ are. In fact, it's sitting at the bottom edge of a multi-week balance and is kind of meandering in the center of it, or at the bottom of it, excuse me. So YM not continuing to make a march to all-time highs. In fact, did not have any sort of similar profile that the other two indices had. In fact, we had a almost balanced profile, kind of just closing, right around where we opened August. And yeah, let's see. Do we get a break? Let's see. In YM, if you get a build probably above this 44,400s, then maybe if we get some more momentum in the rest of equities, maybe the YM is lagging again like it was. I think we were talking about it, kind of looks similar when YM was trading basically at the bottom edge of that balance, and ES and NQ were kind of making that next leg move higher. YM was kind of still sitting down here. So sometimes maybe that may set up for this week, us kind of falling behind the rest. Maybe it catches up a little bit and makes a new all-time high, or at least comes and tests the top edge of the value area so far from July back up here towards 45,000. Oops, just bumped that. So yeah, that'd be interesting to watch this week if we get some momentum in YM. Maybe somebody wants to trade that. Yes. Gold is in fact, wait, someone just deleted that comment. Never mind. I was going to answer someone's question on gold. They were asking if it's tradable. Yes, gold is in fact tradable right now. You can trade it. It is open. See. Yes, doing anything? Nope. Still kind of sitting around the week open and the 6420s, the bottom edge of my magic blue box still. So we'll be watching that this week. But let's jump over. Oops. Where did that go? Bear with me, guys. There we go. Set up? Yep. All right. We're going to get to the economic calendar in a moment. I'm just now reading Kane's comments. It feels like I'm managing a spaceship with this stuff, guys. Like yeah, it's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be taking a little getting used to with just the way things are kind of sitting. So let's talk a little bit about earnings this week. So with the exception of NVIDIA, the Mag 7 has left us behind and won't be back until the following quarter. So we're kind of in now the weird stages where there may be one or two names a week that are worth paying attention to, unless you are a single stock trader, trade options, or just happen to be a long-term holder in some of these larger names. But the big one still this week, Monday, reporting on Monday before the open, monday.com, lovely project management software. CoreWeave after the bell on Tuesday, the Mediterranean Chipotle, Kava reporting. That was everyone's IPO darling as well. I actually am a fan of Kava. I do actually enjoy their food. So, and then the biggest one for this week is still going to be Cisco for the most part. Applied Materials as well Thursday after the close. But for the most part, guys, this is a pretty light week as far as major earnings. Anything that's going to really affect us intraday, or excuse me, in the after hours and the overnight from some of these names. So the big weighted Mag 7, like I said, have come and gone, and we will be waiting for the Lord and Savior of the S&P, NVIDIA, to report here in the coming weeks. In fact, I don't actually know when they report. Let's see. When does NVIDIA report? August 27th, the day after my birthday, NVIDIA reports. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, pretty light earnings week as far as major names. So we'll jump to the economic calendar, which, as I said earlier, has a couple of main events for us, but for the most part, pretty light week. In fact, tomorrow we have nothing outside of two bond auctions with the 3-month and 6-month. The main event for this week is going to be CPI on Tuesday morning at 7:30 Central Time. Used to be a great release. It's kind of lost a little bit of steam at times as everyone continues to want to see inflation not increasing, cooling. But so we'll see if any sort of tariffs that have gone into effect or anything else actually keeps its foot on the gas as far as keeping costs a little higher here in the US. I still don't exactly know how and why these are calculated the way they are, but for the most part, it seems like inflation continues to be defeated, even though it was defeated several years ago when when the Fed gave that lovely mission accomplished speech. So outside of CPI, on Tuesday, we will have Barkin and Schmid talking at 9 and 9:30 respectively. And yeah, a lot of Fed speak this week. Wednesday as well, super light, basically just crude inventories and Barkin talking again. Everyone in the Fed news cycle clearly trying to gun for position themselves potentially for the next Fed chairman position that may come available. We'll see what happens in the new year. But outside of Barkin talking, we will have Goolsby as well as Bostic talking around lunchtime at 12 and 12:30. And then the next one on Thursday, PPI. As always, CPI and PPI kind of leading us in the same week. So we will have producer price index as well as initial jobless claims on Thursday at 7:30 Central Time, followed by Barkin once again talking at 1 o'clock. So he's continuing his world tour this week as well with plenty of speaking engagements. Friday, we will have retail sales, which does tend to move the market pretty violently in the pre-market. And then my favorite main event, the Michigan consumer sentiment. It is the preliminary, as well as business inventories as well at 9 o'clock. So U of M at 9 a.m. after the bell on Friday. We talk about this like every few weeks when it comes up. Just one of those releases that I prefer to always, I rarely ever hold anything into a data release after the bell, but this is one I'm always flat for. I have no interest in trading right before it or shortly thereafter. Gotta let the dust settle. Just the way this one kind of releases. It'll keep you on your toes though, as it always does. So yeah, is that it? Baker Hughes. Yep. So yeah, pretty light week. For the most part, not a lot of gotchas. We're going to be watching the truth headlines as they potentially come out, as they always do throughout the given week, or any other statements, any other speaking engagements. Yes, I had the December contract up for gold. I'm pretty sure that's on December. It auto rolls for me. Yeah, I'm on December for some reason. What was I saying? Totally blanking. Been that kind of week. Oh, I don't think I'm getting live data for GC August. Yes. So you would need to roll. I think we've moved past August. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong if you're an active gold trader. I believe I got prompted to roll at some point last week. At least NinjaTrader auto alerted me to roll. So that would be probably why you're not seeing live data. Because I think we did in fact roll over. So double check that. But we've reached the part of tonight's show. Yeah. Thank you, Florida man. So yeah, like I said, I think when I was coming in last Sunday, it had told me to roll. So that is why. Yeah. So we are on the December contract for gold. But we've reached the part of tonight's show where if you have questions, if there's something you're interested in actually talking about, discussing, asking me, I am happily ready and able to answer. If not, we will do what we always do, which is recap the ES prep and let everybody get out of here. But always like to ask questions. In fact, while we're waiting to see if any come in to the chat, I'm going to grab a sip of water and read through the previous ones. Is NinjaTrader starting their own prop firm? I highly doubt it. think they're very comfortable being the brokerage that they are. Do I trade any crypto? No, I do not. So I have I guess a funny story with crypto. So in college, where I was in college in the, I guess I don't want to, well, I was in college in the kind of 2008 to 2012, I guess. Yeah. And around that time, as you know, crypto kind of was really getting its feet under it. And during some, I guess, how do I describe this? I was in possession of Bitcoin when it was trading nothing. And that's how I, got paid and received money. And I immediately transferred it all to US dollar. So I don't remember how many I held, but it was more than a few coins. Yeah, it's all gone. So that's my crypto story. And ever since then, I've never been a fan of actively trading it, interacting with it. I think it's a bit of a situation where that happened. Crypto did what it did. Bitcoin did what it did. And I never forgave myself in it. No, it just never became an asset that I was actively trading and wanting to trade. Not necessarily I didn't believe in it or anything, but since, trading platforms have added like cryptocurrency, and now the CME has added like micro Bitcoin and micro Ether, like I'm interested if it gets a little more liquid intraday. Like I didn't build it. I have a Bitcoin chart that has my usual like volume profile, delta, and things kind of equated with it. So I've always been interested in kind of looking at it with the micro Bitcoin and playing around with the futures contract for it. I would totally do it. It's just when it's not violently moving, like if we're not getting if there's not a volatility event in the crypto market, it just doesn't seem as fun to trade. Like the spreads are a little bigger. I've screwed around with micro Bitcoin futures. It's just, I've never actively wanted to trade it more than like I do NQ. Like NQ moves plenty enough as it is for me, I guess, to capture a decent amount of points. And it's something I actively watch. Like I said, I've never actively been really trading crypto, following it to a T, like day in and day out on a chart. So yeah, that's my crypto story. It's unfortunate. I could be, yeah, what a different life that might have been. But come on. Yeah, I was a college student. Even if it went to $1,000, you think I probably wouldn't have sold the couple bucks that I had worth of it at the time, a few $100s worth. If it had gone to $1,000, I probably was out, all of it. Because what do I know as a 20-year-old? But yeah, that's my crypto story. Did I ever trade meme stocks? I made a little bit on some GME and AMC, not a ton, but yeah, I was definitely intertwined with that for the first day, and then ran from it ever since. So other than that, no, I've never really done it. I thought this was dumb. I made a good amount of money very quickly on something that made absolutely no sense and kind of ran away from it. So you get lucky. That's all that matters. Any advice on when to make the switch from sim to real? Perhaps a metric. It really depends on how you're trading sim. If you're literally trading it like a true sim, like it's hard. Okay, so here's what I would tell you to do. If you're not going to, let's say, go the prop route where you have some skin in the game and you're using that for a sim, like if you are truly trading like on a true paper trading account, I can't tell you to go live because the money was never real, and any of your results, I would say, at time trading in the sim, like it's hard to really gauge like how much success you've had. What I would tell someone to do if you're trying to also measure that is, with NinjaTrader, for example, like margins are super low on micros. So a good thing that you can do is go screw around with a single micro on, a $50 margin with a few $100 in your account. Probably a little more than that, but then get a feel for actually having a little bit of skin in the game. And you can do this with like the lovely prop firms that are out there in the space too, so that you feel like you actually have some money and potentially money at risk, and that you can, abide by some sort of consistency, some rules that actually may help you continue to evolve and learn. So there's the two routes to do it. You could throw whatever you're comfortable throwing in a brokerage account and trading a single micro, and kind of, throwing like an MES on NinjaTrader and kind of getting comfortable proving out what you're doing then, versus trading truly in a paper account that has no risk. And like I said, you could be adding to losers. You could be doing things that are not long-term success type strategies that's giving you the false sense that you're ready. Until you really have some sort of skin in the game, it's hard to gauge, are you ready for like a true live brokerage account? So like anybody, like I played around on I think Thinkorswim paper trading futures account for a little while and thought I knew what I was doing, and then naturally wired 10 grand to my first brokerage, traded futures, made 10 grand in a couple of days, and then lost 20 grand a couple of days later. So that's how fast like you can think you know what you're doing because you were trading in a paper account. But it really comes down to like, you need to have some skin in the game and actually feel you actually losing money in a bad trade or taking real losses. Like, that's why it's like you need to, like I say, go the micro route with a single, and just see if you can replicate the same success maybe that you were doing in the paper account. If you can, then you can feel comfortable, adding in more capital or sizing appropriately based on your situation. Before I would tell you, yeah, you've done well in a sim paper account, go wire 10, 15 grand to, a brokerage and start slinging minis. Like, absolutely not. So that would be my advice, is actually put some skin in the game, whether it be on a prop or whether with a live brokerage trading, a single micro, and then just see if you can still be successful. See if you can hit some wins, see if you can make a little cash. But most people, it's really going to depend on your situation, how much financial capital you're willing to, put up to risk, what you're comfortable losing, things like that. So it's a little bit of a relative question, but those are the steps that I would take. Like I said, when there's no risk in a true paper account, you don't necessarily take it that seriously. You're probably not following real stop orders. You're not really getting a feel for the live tape, and it moves a little different. Like the sim is the sims. A lot of them are great. They really have done a good job of kind of rebuilding them and making them really feel live. But then when you really see the tape move on a live chart and the way the DOM kind of shifts, it's a little different. Somebody that has traded props before and traded in sim and then, flips back to his personal brokerage, there's like a weird latency in my mind and like eyeballs of like watching the tape in a sim environment versus my true live brokerage accounts. For some reason, I don't know what it is. I've never been able to get it out of my mind, but there's something there. It's just the way it kind of moves. It's just a little bit different. So that's my advice. Fund a small micro account with NinjaTrader or whatever brokerage, and then or go the prop route and put a little skin in the game, and see if you can make get a payout or something. That's how I would do it. That's what I did after I failed my first or not failed, but blew my first brokerage account by thinking I knew what I was doing, sizing up trading minis and doubling my money in 3 days and then losing it 3 days later, basically. So fun stuff. Futures is fun. It's all a learning experience. So I would not be where I am now if I didn't make 10 grand and then lose 20 grand in the span of like 2 weeks. You experience every emotion known to man. Yes, you do. I actually find getting better fills in my personal live account versus my funded sim accounts. I've seen that before. Like I would kind of agree with you. I tend to get obviously you get your true fills or what you're looking for a lot of the time. But I think the sims have gotten pretty good, but there's just something with watching it and the way executions are, and I don't know how some of my OFL stuff, like how it fires in the sim versus in a live environment, it's just a little different. I can't quite put my finger on what that is because the sims just have not been able to like truly replicate the whatever it is, the milliseconds of latency that may exist in a sim versus live environment. But it's something I noticed, and still kind of, it takes like a trade for me when I like have switched back and forth between accounts to just kind of get that speed back in my mind, I guess. So I live with that. But yeah, that's a really good question. Hopefully that was helpful for anyone trying to, figure out when's the right time to move to a live brokerage. There's never a bad time. It's just, you need, like I said, I very much feel like you need to really have some skin in the game, because sim never feels real. You don't treat it as real. And you're not taking A+ setups when there's no money at risk. And then you may dig yourself out of a hole because you're letting a trade truly play out. Or you're adding to a loser because you have unlimited margin and things. So it's like I said, you probably are not abiding by real stops. You're just kind of watching and letting it, and then be like, okay, I'm going to cover here because the trade that was $5,000 against me is now $500 in profit. So I'm going to get out. It's not exactly the way you'd execute on a real account. Best plan might be you can prove by trading consistently on payouts of prop firms. Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with that too. Like I said, there's plenty out there in the space that are awesome. Take advantage of and learn from. And people like to say what they say, but a lot of them, the rules and things, like, it's a good thing for some people to, if you coming into the space with no idea what you're doing, there's at least a structure of how you can formulate some aspect of risk management with the way that some of their rules are. So it's just something else that you can continue to iterate and build on. If you're not, let's say, comfortable throwing $1,000 into, your brokerage account and trading a single micro. So something else that you could do. All right. So quick recap of ES's prep if there are no more questions, and then we'll let you all get out of here. I've been talking for an hour and I can feel it in my throat. So as I said, week open sitting right where we're trading the bottom edge of my lovely blue box here, which basically will equate with the spread to around 6,400 on the old SPOOs. So I'm going to be watching that spot for support and resistance in the coming week. But for the most part, we're trading in about a 3-week balance with all of this volume kind of sitting around here. I'm curious to see, do we get any sort of volume build above this kind of 63.30 spot for potentially that trip up to the all-time high? If not, I would expect us to potentially come down here and retest into kind of last week's value area and the August open, basically going to put us somewhere between kind of the 63.50s and 63.60s. I would expect if we can't find buyers up here, we're probably going to come down and retest basically the value area high from the previous week. So that's what I'd be watching for. Like I said, until we get some real catalyst or meaningful downside, I am not looking to sell this thing outside of, intraday shorts until we break below my old magic blue box from the early part of July, sitting down here at the 62.40s. So we're below that. It still looks like we're buying the dip, but I have no problem shorting pops for scalps intraday. So that's how I'm thinking about things for this week. But for the most part, guys, we're still in a never-ending march to a new all-time high, it very much seems. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for hanging out with me on your Sunday evening. I know the Streamer Boy setup is a work in progress. We will be back with a new background, new setup. It's all coming soon. Like I said, work in progress. Got my hard hat on for the rest of the week. Going to continue to iterate on this desk. Before y'all get out of here, please do hit the thumbs up button. If you did not know, we're on a quest for 150,000 subscribers here on NinjaTrader's channel. So if you're not currently subscribed, please do hit that. Please do hit the thumbs up. It helps me out. It helps people find this show, find the channel, and hang out with us intraday. Be back. We will be back tomorrow morning with pre-market analysis. And do not miss, if you love them on Friday morning, do not miss tomorrow morning when we will have Leo and Stowe back to trade the open. And then Stowe and I are doing a little housekeeping and switching up our afternoon days. So he will be actually trading tomorrow afternoon for the close. Stowe, I think, might be doing 3 shows tomorrow. So keeping up with me from last Sunday and Monday, doing all those shows. So everybody, please tune in for the whole crew this week. But I will see you all on Tuesday. Everyone have a good night. Trade safe out there. Be smart. And we will see you all bright and early tomorrow morning. Cheers.